I speak in the name of God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. So today is a bit of a strange experiment because I am here at the church alone. There's no one else here except me. And little did I realize that all of my sermon notes are on the very phone that's being used to stream the service. So that kind of stymies me when it comes to preaching the notes from my sermon. But perhaps in a funny sort of way, the preparation that went into today can create its own sort of life in its own sermon. For today, I want to explore the parable of the sower. It's an allegory. An allegory is a story that we find that actually has different interpretations, different meanings taken from the story. It's not a literal story of seeing a man sowing seed, but it's a story that has sort of like a moral to the story. And there's not a right and wrong interpretation of an allegory. We're supposed to explore it and go deep within it to try and find meaning for ourselves. And so I found the parable of the sower throughout my life a wonderful little piece of encouragement. It first came into the world right there on the north shore of the Sea of Galilee, not far from Capernaum. There Jesus is on the shore with all of these people rushing in to hear him. And he gets into a little boat and pushes off the shore just a little bit so that he can be seen and heard. And he tells us these words about the sower. When I first read this, when I was in Galilee, I imagined the hillside that's just off to the west, to the left. I imagined maybe there was a farmer walking along. And then when Jesus gave this story, that perhaps he was actually looking at farmers throwing seed. And of course, he's speaking to an agrarian society. People in Jesus' day would have known what it meant to sow seed. They would have had a first-hand experience of growing crops and growing food. And so the ideas behind this little allegory would probably speak more profoundly maybe to the people following Jesus than to us today who just go to the grocery store to get our vegetables and our fruit. And so he tells them these different things about the parable, the sower who's just indiscriminately grabbing seed and throwing it, grabbing seed and throwing it, and some falls on rocks and hard ground. And he teaches them with this. And they're left thinking, well, what does this mean? What does this mean for us, this parable of the sower? And of course, our other readings today from Isaiah and also the Psalm and the story from Paul's letter to the Romans, they all have this agrarian growth. Many apologies. So let me backtrack this a little. There once was a man who went to the flower shop, and he said, "I'd like to buy 2 violets, potted violets, please." And the man who ran the flower shop said, "Well, I'm really sorry, but we don't have any violets. We've sold out of them, but I'll make you a great deal on these 2 geraniums I have over here." And the fellow said, No, that just won't do. When my wife went away, she asked me to water these 2 violets, and when she gets back, she's going to expect to see 2 violets. And the interesting thing about this funny little story is it's not that hard to care for plants. It's not that hard to raise and care for small potted plants. It's not that hard to grow crops in good soil. And yet, there's something quite astounding at this notion that God can scatter seed in our world, seed that can land upon our own lives and somehow transform us. And so there they were listening to Jesus talk about the story of the sower, looking at the hills and imagining people sowing seeds. trying to find out what this means. And I remember as I was preparing today, I noted three things. The sower in the story. There are two ways to look at the sower. One is to see the sower as God. God sowing love into the world. And this God that we serve is reckless and generous and reaches in the bag of grace and love and flings it abroad around the world. This is the sort of God that I believe in. This sower who loves all of us radically, amazingly. But then the other aspect of seeing the sower is seeing ourselves as the one who answers the Great Commission to go into the world and make disciples. For we are called by Christ into the world to behave just like His Father, spreading seed recklessly, indiscriminately, being the people who take the love of Christ into the world, that love which transforms the world. The sower. And what about the seed? I thought to myself as I was looking at this text, is the seed the gospel? What is the seed? Is the seed love? Is the seed God's transformative power? Of course, there's no right or wrong answer, but we must ask ourselves, we must explore the question of what is the seed? What does it mean when the sower sows the seed? What is he doing? What is that seed? And if we know anything about seed, we know that a seed has to be broken and shriveled and broken apart before new life can come. It must fall down. For someone without faith, if they saw a seed laying in dirt, they might imagine nothing more desolate than horrible. And yet a person of faith looks at that same seed and they see potential and opportunity. They can imagine a flower where there is the shriveled up little broken seed. Yesterday it was so powerful to stand behind the church and to see people walking through this little piece of land, which several months ago was just sort of visioned of what do we do with this piece of land? It's a problem. It's something we have to mow. It's extra yard that has grass that has to be cut. And a few people in this wonderful church had a vision. They imagined a place of wildflowers. They imagined butterflies. They imagined a beauty that had not yet even been there. No one had even thought about this. And yesterday, for the first time, a group of people walked a path in what's now becoming a wildflower garden. And they threw seeds, and there were joyful sounds as they walked the path. Because where some people saw nothing, other people saw opportunity. And in a few months from now, people will see flowers, and they won't be able to imagine what it looked like without the flowers. That, to me, is the parable of the sower coming to life. And lastly, the final thing really that struck me this week was imagining the earth. What is it about the earth in the story of the parable of the sower that oftentimes gets missed? Because we look at the story and we think of the sower, and we think of the seed and the sower of the seed, and there I am thinking about, what about the preparation? What about the earth? What was the story I heard one time that the fellow that said the church was having a prayer vigil to pray for rain. And the man who showed up at the prayer vigil carrying an umbrella was the only one that really had faith. Sometimes you have to break the ground. You have to commit yourself to preparing the soil. And everybody knows that plants and flowers and vegetables grow better in manure. So you have to get ready to realize that when you turn the dirt over, it may stink. It may smell a lot. I remember one of my first clergy meetings in the Diocese of London. I gathered there with all the clergy across London in this big church, and the Bishop of London climbed up in the pulpit and he looked down at all of us, all the clergy of the whole of London. And he looked down and he said, clergy are like cow manure. And we all were shocked. Here I am, well, gee, the bishop doesn't think much of us. And he said, all in one place you begin to stink. But spread out over the whole of London, you can do a lot of good and you can transform a city. And there I was thinking, wow, that's what it's about. It's about being rich. It's about being a person of passion who can take the goodness of the gospel and spread it all around so that the seed can take root and can grow and produce a harvest. A harvest that can feed a world. And we all know that we live in a world that is hungry, that in some ways is desperate. And we have an answer that we can offer. And perhaps it doesn't solve all the problems of the world, but it certainly makes the problems of the world endurable. As I said to a dying man this week, as we laughed together, he was facing his own death, and he did die. And as he was facing his death, we laughed. And I said, hey, it'll be all right in the end. If it ain't all right, it ain't the end. And he knows the victory this day. As I stand here before you, he stands before Almighty God. That's my faith. I believe that the one who taught the disciples using parables like the parable of the sower is the same one who called him home, and the same one who's calling us to rise up, to proclaim a radical, reckless, inclusive gospel that shows love to a hurting world, that dares to go in the broken places and be the broken seed that can transform society. So that's the word that I bring to you today. Be salt, be light, and let God's seed germinate within your very souls, today and always. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give
Praise His holy name.
you
Amen.
rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. You will find rest for your souls. You will find rest for your souls. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I